And we're live.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to today's full meeting of the Committee on Oversight. Veronica, will you take the roll, please?
Please stay here when I call your name. Roger Beachy,
Here.
Vicki Chandler, Stephen Lee.
Here.
Scott Stanley, Kayvon Stassen,
Here.
Wanda Ward,
Wanda's here. She said she stepped away for a moment.
thank you, and Stephen Willard.
Here.
Do we have any other board members on the call today? Okay. All right, back to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Veronica. As you know, our NSBO liaisons are Ann Bushmiller, Portia Flowers, and Alexandra Serchel. Our executive secretaries are Kelly Stefanko and Veronica Shelley. Moving to our agenda, today's entire meeting will be in the open session. We will begin by hearing from the Inspector General, Allison Lerner, and the Office of the Inspector General's Director of Research Integrity and Administrative Investigation Divisions, Aaron Manka, on investigating research misconduct by recipients of NSF funding. The committee will then move to hear a report out from the OIG's independent auditor, Kearney and Company, on the outcome of the fiscal year 2023 financial statement audit. After that report, Janice Coughlin-Peaster, the Chief Financial Officer and Performance Improvement Officer, will give her quarterly update. Beginning with the OIG will now join us to provide an update of their investigation into research misconduct by recipients of NSF funding. As I mentioned, the NSF IG, Allison Lerner, is here today, along with Aaron Manka, Director of Research Integrity and Administrative Investigations, and Aliza Saknovitz, Deputy Director of Research Integrity and Administrative Investigations within the OIG, to give a presentation to the group. Allison?
Thank you very much, Steve. I'm not going to take long. I do just want to let you all know that since the early 90s, our office has had a team of investigative scientists who've had responsibility for investigating allegations of fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism in NSF-funded research. And over the decades, they've developed a great deal of expertise in doing this. And I want to give them the opportunity now to share some of that with you all. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Aaron and Aliza, who lead that group. And thank you for your interest in this topic. So Aaron and Aliza, it's all yours.
Thank you, Allison. Let's see. Nope. Trying to get this share here. What are people seeing? Are they seeing the slides?
Yes, plagiarism investigation.
Great.
But in very
Okay.
small, but in very small format.
Oh, it's very small. All right.
Thank you.
While Aaron enlarges it, let me just note that Scott Stanley has joined us. So we have that on the record.
Okay.
Yeah, my computer's crashed twice, so my apologies for.
I'm having the same problem, Scott. It's, I think, a sunspot day or something like that.
I think so.
While Aaron's fixing the slides, I just want to make sure y'all know that we've embedded time in here for questions. So please, if you have them, don't hesitate to ask. So Aaron, back to you.
All right. Let's try this again.
Looks good.
All right, and there we go. All right, so I'm Aaron Manka. I'm the Director of Research Integrity and Administrative Investigations at NSF. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak and talk about the work that we do regarding the investigations, particularly into research misconduct. And today I'm going to be focusing on plagiarism, but feel free to ask questions about any of the activities that we carry out. So I'd first like to give a shout out to my team who does all the work. Eliza is my deputy and she'll be speaking after me. And then Laurel, Valerie, Beth, Wayne, and Monty is our expert. So this chart just kind of highlights the umbrella of activities that we consider under our group, Research Integrity and Administrative Investigations. So the main part of that is in the center is red is our investigations into allegations of research misconduct, which NSF is defined as plagiarism, fabrication, and falsification. That responsibility has been delegated to us, and it makes us unique among the IGs in that we're the only Office of Inspector General with dedicated staff to address allegations of research misconduct. You'll see right above that, we also carry out investigations into allegations to protect the integrity of NSF's gold standard merit review. For example, if reviewers have undisclosed conflicts or if reviewers inappropriately use or release material from the review process. In the upper left are allegations that could be considered either administratively by our group or by our colleagues in program integrity as civil criminal matters. And in the lower left, those allegations are ones that we work in conjunction with NSF program officers typically. In the upper right, you'll see that those are allegations we don't do. NSF has an office designated to handle harassment and discrimination. So as I said, NSF has defined research misconduct as plagiarism, fabrication, and falsification. The only thing I want to highlight here from the definitions is that under plagiarism, it's the misappropriation of someone else's stuff, basically, so that the reuse of an author's own text or data is okay. So some people in the community call that self-plagiarism, but it does not meet NSF's definition of plagiarism. So we have an intake process. So allegations come through our hotline from all over, from PIs, reviewers, program officers, research integrity officers at universities. They can even be anonymous. What we look at when we get these allegations is there an NSF nexus? That is, some connection to NSF. And is there enough information there for us to, credibly investigate the allegation? So not something vague like, John Doe stole all my work, or, that person's data is all fake. So the Code of Federal Regulations defines our process. So it's a two-step process, an inquiry and an investigation. And those are actions, those are the parts that we carry out with universities. So if we do the inquiry, we're very likely going to refer the investigation to the university to conduct. Likewise, if the university conducts the inquiry, is going to conduct an investigation, it's required to notify us. So we refer investigations to universities for a couple of reasons. One is NSF believes that universities should be responsible for maintaining the integrity, on their campus. And the other is that very likely universities are the best place to carry out the investigation, particularly falsification and fabrication, because all of the subject's data are going to be at the university in labs, on machines, or in computers. The adjudication process is handled by NSF. So here's what that looks like in a flow chart. So there's 90 days for the inquiry, 180 days for the investigation. At the conclusion, if we believe research misconduct took place, we notify the subject, we write a report, the subject gets 30 days to comment, and then that report goes to NSF for adjudication. So since we're talking about plagiarism today, I just kind of want to walk you through the process that we go through when we conduct a plagiarism inquiry. So as I said, we get the allegation, and the first thing we have to do is look for an NSF nexus and establish that there's enough substance to investigate, enough specificity. So we identify a target, which is typically an NSF proposal. If there is a known source, we will look at that. Otherwise, we prepare the document for our plagiarism software and evaluate the results. And I just want to say, so this requires some human interaction. So the software spits out a number, but that's really not sufficient to determine whether or not, there's plagiarism that's serious that should be investigated. So we look for, complete sentences and paragraphs instead of just scattered word fragments. And the standard that we use is if the copied material is appropriately quoted, cited, and referenced. If we find problems that there appears to be plagiarism in the proposal, We send an inquiry letter, which basically has 3 questions. So we provide the evidence to the subject and say, looks like you copied. Did you do this? And please explain. And then we ask, is there anything else copied that we missed? Or is there anything in other documents that you submitted to NSF that we're not aware of? So as I mentioned, the process requires us, the process has a referral to institutions in there that we do. They have 180 days to complete their investigation. We can assist them in their investigation, but we give guidance. But a lot of our guidance is really ask your general counsel. So we want universities, to conduct an independent investigation into the allegations. We do get a final product back from the institution that is a report with supporting evidence, as well as the adjudication decision. So there are criteria by which we have to evaluate the evidence to see if there's sufficient, if the elements are met for a determination of research misconduct. So that is, did the subjects act as meet the definition of research misconduct as defined by NSF, and is there an NSF nexus? If yes, was that bad act committed culpably? That is, with a degree of intent that's either reckless, knowing, or intentional. It's not an honest error. So honest error is not research misconduct. And if yes, was there a significant departure from accepted practices? And I'll say a little bit about each of those in the next slides. And then there's some serious factors that we have to evaluate that reflect on our recommendations that we're going to make to NSF and for NSF to consider when determining what actions it wants to take. So intent is a 2-part evaluation. The first part is it honest error or is it culpable? That is, reckless, knowing, or intentional. For plagiarism, we generally assume that is a knowing act. So plagiarism mostly these days is you select and copy material from one document, you go to another document, find an insertion point, you paste that material, and then you integrate the text. It's hard for us to see how somebody could, select, copy, paste, and integrate and not know that they're doing that. So we generally assume that's a knowing act. And then significant departure. So the act has to be, we're not looking for, stuff that's in the gray zone or small departures. We are looking for, truly bad acts that rise to the level of research misconduct. And the act is judged against community standards, which could be the university, professional society, or NSF in its plagiarism adjudications generally uses the community of researchers who submit proposals to NSF. So NSF has guidance in the PAPPG for PIs when they're preparing their proposals to follow core citation practices. And if they don't follow this guidance, that's considered a significant departure. So the standard developed evidence is a preponderance of the evidence. So each element has to be proven by that. So that means it's more likely than not, or if you like numbers, it's 51%. So you don't have to be 100% certain that this is what happened, or even 90, 80, or 70% certain that that's what happened. You just have to be 51% certain that that's what happened. So as I said, the institutions conduct their investigation. They give us their investigation package. We assess that report for accuracy and completeness and whether the institution followed reasonable procedures. And we look to determine if we can pretty much accept that report and findings in whole or in part. Our preference is to accept it in whole. That is, that we don't have to redo the investigation or conduct supplementary investigation, although we can do that. If there are unanswered questions, we write back to the university and say, hey, it doesn't seem this conclusion supported by the evidence. Do you have something else for that? Or, there's missing evidence or something of that nature. So as I said, if we believe, if the university made a finding and we believe that that's going to hold up, we notify the subject. We will draft our own report if we don't do any supplemental investigation. And then we send that report to the subject for comment. And then after that, we send it to NSF for adjudication. So NSF takes an independent look at the report. So there's a separation of investigation and adjudication. So we do the investigation, NSF does the adjudication. The reg says it's the deputy director. We haven't had one of those in a while. So the NSF will decide if research misconduct took place, and if so, what it's going to do about it. Typically, these are those actions that NSF takes. So in every case, if there's going to be a finding, NSF conveys that finding in a letter of reprimand. We have consistently recommended, and NSF has consistently taken the action to require subjects to take remedial RECR, responsible and ethical conduct of research training. We also recommend certifications and assurances. Certifications are a statement from the subject with any future submissions to NSF for a period of time that nothing in that document violates NSF's research misconduct reg. And assurances, the subject is required to have a university official review his or her work, and that official provides an assurance to NSF that, to the best of that person's knowledge, nothing in the subject's work violates NSF's research misconduct reg. I've indicated this one because this one is for plagiarism cases pretty standard now. So we have recommended that NSF prohibit the subject from participating as a reviewer or advisor or consultant. If the subject, especially in plagiarism, like copies from publicly available documents, they probably shouldn't be trusted with NSF's confidential proposals for a while. And then the most significant action NSF can take is debarment, and that prohibits subjects from not just obtaining NSF support, but funding from any other federal agency. And at the bottom here, I've listed questionable practice letters. So that's something our office does. If we find that there was a bad act, that is something that met the definition of research misconduct, but one of the elements wasn't satisfied, generally it's significant departure, then we send what's called a questionable practice letter. And as an example, like for plagiarism, if we get an allegation of plagiarism that somebody copied some text, and we look and we find, yes, there is copied text, but it's like a sentence and a few word fragments or a couple sentences. We don't feel that that warrants further investigation, doesn't rise to the level of research misconduct. So we send what's called a questionable practice letter, QRP. And we can do that if there were problems with current pending support, for example, or something of that nature that doesn't rise to the level of research misconduct. So this I show you I want to give you a flavor of the numbers of cases that we see and the proportion of allegations of plagiarism versus fabrication and falsification. So all of this, and I also want to give a plug for our webpage. So all of this material is on our webpage. So we have a research misconduct by the numbers, and it has our research misconduct data as well as other information. So you can see it's a couple years worth of data here that we get about between 30 and 40 allegations of plagiarism each year, and between 15 and 21 allegations of fabrication, falsification. So we get, a lot more plagiarism allegations than fabrication and falsification combined. And so that's the takeaway message I wanted you to have here. And then these are the adjudications NSF does, again, for a couple of years worth of data. You can see that NSF makes around, not quite half a dozen findings of plagiarism, a couple findings of fabrication or falsification, and we send quite a few QRPs each year. So I want to end with a brief comparison of how our office and the Office of Research Integrity at PHS, Public Health Service, handle things. So they're like the 900-pound gorilla in the field of research misconduct. They have a lot of funding, a lot more staff. We do things similarly. We have the same reg, but there are some differences, and so it's good to highlight what's common and what's not. So we both do intakes of assessments. We both do referrals to universities. We coordinate, we share information. But I've described our adjudication process at NSF. ORI primarily relies on what it calls a voluntary exclusion agreement. So it basically presents the subject with the evidence, says we think you committed research misconduct. If you think so, sign this form. And these are the actions we're proposing that you undergo. We both, refer investigations we expect universities to do, independent. We provide guidance and assistance, but we don't tell the university what to do. RI is a little bit more heavy-handed in telling universities, that they expect certain things, certain steps to happen in the investigations. RI is not a law enforcement agency. We are, which is really beneficial because we have the power to issue subpoenas, which allows us to get data from subjects who don't want to share it with universities, or there's information out of journal that we need. And then RI, one reason it is the 900-pound gorilla is that it has a whole division that's dedicated to education and integrity outreach. So we recognize the importance of that, but that's part of our other duties. And we try to do that when we can, when the budget allows, but we don't have a separate division whose purpose is just for education and outreach. One of the big differences that the community notices is that because the voluntary exclusion agreement requires subjects to agree to have their name released, RI publishes the findings with the names. We publish all our findings, but they're anonymized. RI also does relatively few plagiarism cases, and it's our most frequent allegation. So that's what I wanted to say. I'm now going to turn it over to Aliza, and sure.
Before you do, there are two elements to merit review, one intellectual merit and the other broader impacts.
Yes.
Do you find plagiarism in broader impacts?
Yes, wherever, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my screen to come back up. Let me just stop sharing for a second so I can see people. Yes, so wherever the plagiarism is in the proposal. So NSF, that guidance that I showed briefly, says all parts of a proposal should be treated with equal care. So it doesn't matter whether the plagiarized text is in the intellectual merit part or in the broader impact section. If it's copied, we investigate it.
Thank you.
Can you give us a sense of whether or not, or what the percentage is that's on the broader impact side versus the merit side?
No. So like I said, we don't really track that. If
I'm just
yeah,
curious about whether or not people are trying to, whether there's sort of cheating on the
so I
broader
can tell
impact
you
side.
we've definitely had cases where that is where the plagiarism has been in broader impacts, and we've had cases where the majority of the plagiarism was in the broader impact section. But I really don't know like what ratio or what percentage intellectual merit versus broader impacts. So I'm sorry.
Thanks.
All right.
Any other questions?
No,
All
go
right,
ahead,
let
Liz.
me get the slides back up for Aliza.
Oh, okay. Do you want to do it or
Or you want to go ahead and do it? It'd be easier for you to do it.
okay, sure.
All right.
Let me make sure I can do it. And if there's a problem.
And while you're doing that, was there another question before Aliza start? If not, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Aliza.
Oh, actually, I do have a problem with it. Aaron, can you share yours so I can see my notes? Or not so much?
Let me see. So what are y'all seeing now? Are you seeing the slides again?
Yes, we're seeing slides.
But not the slideshow. Let me stop sharing. Can I stop sharing and you can, I should have let you just keep it on. I'm sorry, Aaron.
So you want me to share again?
Yeah, can you please share again, Aaron?
Okay, yeah.
It's just, I can't, my laptop doesn't allow for two things at the same time, unfortunately.
Aliza's
Awesome.
going to be talking about a study we did of the data from 10 years worth of plagiarism cases. And we wanted to see what insights we could glean from that. Now it's all yours.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Aaron, for helping out with that.
Sure.
Yeah, so I want to talk about a project that our office conducted and a report that our office produced in 2022. I know that some of you are already aware of this project, but I know there are some new board members here. So we figured this would be a good opportunity to share our findings again and have any discussion. So the goal of our project was to use our extensive investigative experience to provide insight into plagiarism as it relates to NSF-funded research and to provide plagiarism prevention strategies to institutions based on that experience. Next slide. We examined data from 134 plagiarism cases that closed during fiscal years 2007 to 2017. For context, during that same time, NSF made a total finding of research misconduct in 170 subjects. The plagiarism cases constituted 81% of the total findings. Our data set included 137 researchers and 106 unique institutions and involved 320 NSF proposals. We collected our information primarily from the reports of investigation that we sent to NSF. We're going to share a number of interesting findings. So first, we found that our subjects were primarily faculty, often employed in junior academic positions. So of the 137 subjects, 113 were academic faculty. Of those, 61% were in junior academic positions, such as assistant professor, that's the darker blue, which is generally the first academic position that PhD recipients or postdocs obtain, or they held non-tenure track positions such as adjunct professor or research faculty. Next slide. Second, we found that the subjects were often recent degree recipients. 59 of the subjects, or 43%, received their highest degree from 2000 to 2009, that's the yellow, and the gray, 34%, received theirs from 1990 to 1999. Next slide. Third, we found that the researchers were often educated outside of the US. So in this graph, the orange indicates US-based education, the gray indicates non-US based education, and the blue was we just didn't know where they were educated. So as you can see, many subjects received their bachelor's and master's degrees outside of the US and PhD degrees in the US. However, 42 subjects, or 31%, received all of their education from non-US institutions. When subjects did receive non-US education, they did so in 36 different countries, most frequently China, India, Canada, and Korea. Next slide. So next we found that the subjects often committed plagiarism in multiple NSF proposals. So 55% of the subjects committed plagiarism in more than one NSF proposal, 62% exhibited a pattern of plagiarism. There were even 5 subjects who committed more plagiarism while they were under investigation by their institution or by our office. We also found that researchers often submitted numerous proposals, but did not often receive grants. So 41% submitted 16 or more proposals. Almost every subject had at least one NSF proposal declined. 39% had no awards, and 38% had 1 to 5 awards. Of the 320 proposals that we reviewed, 75% of them were declined, but 18% were awarded. For context, in fiscal year 2020, NSF proposal funding rate was 28%. I'll note that, when a proposal is awarded and we find plagiarism, there is a process for handling that. And for the cases that we talk about in the report, NSF recovered approximately $990,000. Next slide. So one really fun part of this project was looking at the reasons that people provided for why they committed plagiarism. So the explanations that subjects provided were somewhat all over the place, but they could be grouped into some common themes. The most common reason given was that they did not understand what constituted appropriate citation, which, as Aaron explained before, we require, or we want there to be, quotation, citation, and reference, QCR. Another excuse that was very common was that they thought they had appropriately cited the text when, in our opinion, they had not. They did not understand which text required appropriate citation. So they might consider some text to be common language or technical when we didn't agree with that. They considered appropriate citation less important in certain document sections than others, such as the background. Another common one was that they recklessly incorporated sources into drafts, meaning they might have cut and pasted from sources they were looking at while they were doing their, writing into an intermediate document without the source name, and then just put that into the proposal without any reference that it wasn't their own. And of course, time constraints was another common explanation that we received. The slide provides others, such as personal problems, English language challenges, and people said that they simply made a mistake as well. Next slide. Based on our review and our extensive investigative experience, we suggested numerous strategies that institutions could consider in the areas of institutional culture, our ECR training, support, and document submission. I'm not going to go into all of them now. There's a lot. I'm going to refer you to the report. I will mention that for institutional culture, the themes of our recommendation included fostering a culture of research integrity and publicizing an institutional research misconduct policy. For the RECR training, the themes were establishing targeted training and emphasizing the consequences of plagiarism. In the theme of support, we recommended supporting inexperienced and unsuccessful grant writers, and of course, more generalized support for all researchers. And then in the theme of document submission, we suggested making plagiarism detection software available and considering a pre-submission process as well. Again, the report has lots more details about these kinds of strategies and some recommendations. Next slide, please. I do want to end on a little bit of a lighter note. So as I said, the report talked about the excuses that the subjects provided to us. But in our office, we do have this Hall of Fame of plagiarism excuses. These are things that, you just simply cannot make up. I won't go through all of them, but I will point out a few that, the reviewers are smart enough that they'll know what's plagiarized and what's not. The room was overheated. Yep. Severe acid reflux. Someone heard some bird vocalizations and their, attention got taken away from what they were doing. I love the mental telepathy that, the subject had told his co-PI or communicated to his co-PIs that the material that was being provided was not finalized, but it was a mental communication. And last but not least, I'll note the one where the subject said that he was told, well, he can't put too many citations in because then people won't think I'm proposing anything new. Anyway, so I'll leave you with that, and then we'll open up to any questions.
This was fascinating. Are there any questions from the commission or from the committee? That's a good sign.
Kayvon and Scott have their hands raised, and Wanda.
Kayvon?
Thank you. That was really, really interesting. I wanted to ask a couple of things. One is with the definition of plagiarism as described here, not including what is sometimes referred to as self-plagiarism, is that stated or written down clearly in a place where proposers can see this distinction between plagiarism broadly and self-plagiarism specifically? I ask because I will tell you, I hear routinely from colleagues what I now understand is a misperception that they have to be very, very careful about not reusing their own material for fear of being brought up on charges. So I just want to ask, where might we direct colleagues to see that that's written down clearly someplace?
So that's, it is in the reg, that's the definition that I pointed to, but I also want to say that, so the federal definition, which NSF uses, does not include, reuse of one's own text. However, many journals do that. So when people are talking about, concerned about that, there's a legitimate concern in the community, particularly among journals, but as far as the federal process goes, no. So, and that's just in our definition. So it's on our webpage. A lot of universities have analyzed research misconduct regs on their own university web pages to, I don't know if they spell that out. I guess what I'm asking is, and maybe I should just go look, but does it say
self-plagiarism is not included in this definition? Are you just saying that
No, it does
it
not
is
say that.
excluded?
Yes, right. Yeah, you have to, yeah, the definition is, misappropriation of another person's
Okay.
stuff. So that doesn't spell out that, what is often referred to as self-plagiarism is in fact, not plagiarism under the federal definition.
Okay. I'll just offer, I think unless there's some reason why it would not be permitted to just say so, I can tell you, people worry about these things.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We could put something like that on, like I mentioned, we have a research misconduct by the numbers page. We could maybe have a little section there that talks about like common misunderstandings.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, is it correct to interpret from what was shared that in general, proposals that are guilty of some form of plagiarism or other bad doing have tended to essentially not be very good proposals, right? They're not getting selected for funding very often. Do I interpret that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to elaborate, Lisa?
No, I was just going to say yes. You definitely interpreted that correctly.
Yeah, the cream generally rises to the top.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Scott.
I would note too that, it's not uncommon for plagiarism to be suspected during review of proposals. And then a referral comes to our office. Our advice to the panel doing that is complete your work. We will handle, any investigation that's necessary. But it is back when we used to be in Boston, I would have people from panels walk into my office say, yeah, this is my texter. I recognize a colleague. So we don't always we have human plagiarism detectors sometimes. Sorry. Back to the question.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. What percentage of, let's say a proposal isn't flagged by a human for plagiarism, how many are more formally reviewed via the software? Because these numbers in context to the number of proposals NSF receives seem great, very low, but like what percentage of the proposals do we actually look at?
Oh boy, so it's small, right? So NSF gets what, 30,000 proposals a year.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at, the numbers, like you saw, 20 to 30 allegations a year. So that's, less than half of 1%.
But
Well,
let me make clear, we don't proactively review proposals. We don't have the resources to do that. And I'm frozen, aren't I? Because it's that. Forgive me. All right. Am I back?
Yes.
Yeah, we don't have the resources to proactively review things. So we are responding to concerns that are brought to our attention. If we, in the distant past, we did do some proactive cases that generated, a fair amount of work for us to then have to assess, is this meaningful or not? And, given how small our team is, what we've learned is we are stuck in reactive mode. So you can't make an informed assessment of the extent of plagiarism in NSF funded research looking simply at our statistics here. I think there's research done by the academic community in this area that has certain ideas about what the likely level of plagiarism is. And I think, Aaron, you can probably pull that, those thoughts.
Yeah, so there has, like Allison said, there have been some studies with surveys and whatnots, and based on our previous proactive reviews, I would estimate that it's around 2%, maybe 2.5%.
And the other question is a reach back, and you had mentioned that ORI investigates plagiarism as a far lower percentage of their investigations. What are they finding? What are they emphasizing?
So that research, falsification and fabrication. So they have, I would say, it's easily flipped. 80% falsification, fabrication, maybe 20%. It could be even 90-10. They really have a lot of falsification, fabrication cases that they're looking at.
Could I follow up, Steve?
Please.
Yeah, it's interesting about how you choose which ones to use, and I understand, Allison, that you can't proactively do this, but there are some very large awards, and I wonder if can there be an increased focus on those where we're most vulnerable, and that is in some of these high profile cases. I understand that we weed out anyway those that are not going to be successful as grad applicants. You have far fewer successful grad applicants than total, of course, 20% or 25%. How many of those have been selected randomly for review, or can they be? And is that a way to sort of get to Scott's concerns about lack of proactive review?
Yeah, so I'll state that we actually did that one time. So in 2011, we hired somebody and we looked at every funded NSF proposal. So that was our focus. We didn't even consider the declined proposals. We looked at all the funded proposals for plagiarism. We found some and we recovered some money from that, but the overall percentage was less than 0.5%. So, you know, when we say
that's encouraging, Aaron. That is encouraging. The cream does rise to the top.
So that's why
I understand. Scott, did you have any follow-up from that? I mean, I sort of share some of your concerns.
That hit right on the head. When you said 2011, it's like it's been 12 years, but if the percentage was that low, that's great.
Yeah.
Wanda?
Thank you. And thanks for the excellent presentations, Aaron and Alicia. My question pertains to the definition of research misconduct more broadly. And I was wondering if it might not be time, given some of the recent critical issues that we faced within the scientific enterprise, to revisit what we consider or how we define research misconduct. In particular, I'm wondering about consideration of the ongoing crisis, one might say, about harassment, sexual harassment in the scientific enterprise. It's currently generally, I think, regarded within the domain of research environment, in contrast to research misconduct more broadly. And I've been talking informally over the past several months with, you know, the board office and a few others. My understanding, even from some previous board members, is that this is an issue that has been considered in the past. And given the, again, the timeliness of the very serious issues around sexual harassment, while it does certainly pertain to research environment, might this be an opportunity for the board to revisit it in terms of definition? I would imagine OSTP would have to be, you know, brought into the conversation. I know we have engagement with OSTP around the quadrennial review, et cetera. But that's my question or suggestion more broadly.
Thank you for that. Allison, thank you and your staff for your time and great presentation. Next, we'll hear an update from OIG's contracted independent auditor, Kearney and Company, regarding their report of NSF's fiscal year 2023 financial statement. Representing Kearney today is Brian Nelms. They will discuss the annual financial statement audit, the auditor's responsibilities, and the results. CO members will have the opportunity to comment and ask questions. Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Willard. Appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Nelms. I'm the engagement partner on the National Science Foundation financial statement audit. Carney and Company has been contracted by the OIG to perform this annual audit. I do have a few slides to share, so if someone can confirm when you can see them on your end. 1 second here. Is that coming through okay for everyone?
No, we're not seeing it.
Hmm. Let me try something else. How about now?
No, it's up.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again for letting me participate today. I'm going to brief the financial statement audit first, and then Carney was also engaged to perform the FSMA audit. Philip Moore is the partner for that engagement. I will speak on his behalf to provide that update. So this is an annual requirement that we perform. Carney issues 3 reports. The scope of our audit is to opine on the material accuracy of the financial statements issued annually. Our audit runs from March to November. We issue our reports in November. As you will see on this slide, we issued 3 reports last year. The first one is our actual opinion related to the accuracy of the financial statements. We issued an unmodified opinion. What that means is we didn't find any material misstatements that would misrepresent what was presented. We also issue a report on internal controls over financial reporting. Here you will see we had no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies. Those are what are considered reportable conditions that would impact, the controls that would impact those financial statements. I had mentioned in my exit conference with NSF that to me, this is considered the clean. So there's a clean opinion and a clean report on internal controls, which shows, the health of what NSF's financial position. Finally, we issue a report on applicable laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements and compliance. We also had no material instances of non-compliance noted. So fairly clean report this year. I will say last year was clean as well, but that doesn't discount the work that goes into an annual audit. Our team issued over, close to 500 provided by client requests, and that does not even include our sample items that we look at as well. We had 17 areas of audit disciplines that we looked at. And, each year we capture anything that changes from the business perspective for NSF. So this year, in fiscal 23, one of the biggest initiatives was transitioning to a G-invoicing. We were able to capture the new control environment for that and assess, how that process has gone. Our team works really well. We've developed a good relationship with both the OIG and NSF management. And from my perspective, the financial statement audit ran very smoothly last year.
Good.
On the second slide, I did just list some of the NFRs. These are some of the findings that we did come across during our audit. None of them rose to a material level. So as I briefed on the last slide, these are specific for management. They're findings that we have identified in the internal control perspective that we give feedback to management. Obviously, there's things that can be improved from year to year. Some of these are repeat findings from the prior year, and some of them were, uncovered in fiscal 23 during the course of our testing. I won't go into depth in most of these, but I can certainly answer some questions surrounding the NFRs. Again, these were all issued to management. We wrapped them up in a management letter. Corrective action will be discussed during the fiscal 24 audit, and we will assess, whether any of these have been remediated. I'll pause here and take a few minutes to just answer any questions on the financial statement audit before I transition to the FSMA.
It's nice to get a clean audit once again.
I can certainly agree. And like I said, there's a lot of work that goes into that. And so I appreciate the cooperation from NSF management. We did get a lot of timely responses, from their team and being able to support the audit. So I will transition to the next slide then. And again, I will be briefing this on behalf of Phil Moore. He's the partner on the FSMA. Just to give you a background, the FSMA scope focuses on key metrics that are assessed annually. So there's 20 core key metrics from a security program and practice perspective. In addition to those 20 core metrics, FSMA also defined 20 supplemental metrics that were assessed biannually for over the past fiscal 23. Kearney's methodology for the audit included testing effectiveness of the selected security controls implemented at NSF's and USAP general support systems in accordance with NIST special publication 853 Rev 5. Happy to report that NSF did receive an overall assessment of effective, which is level 4, managed and measurable, based on the criteria. NSF
Good. There's been a lot of progress on that over the last 6 years.
Yes. Yep. I will say, as of last year, I believe they were also effective. So one of the first things that we do from a FSMA perspective is report on prior year findings as well. But we have seen improvement over the 5 domains that are listed below here on this slide as well. So progress has been made to achieve an increase in each of the levels year over year. As part of our assessment, we consider both qualitative and quantitative factors to determine the overall maturity level of the systems. And we calculated the domain maturity levels by determining an average metric maturity level of each. So each of the 5 domains are listed below. The one that, it still needs a little bit of improvement is the protect. That is identified as ineffective. Similar to the financial statement audit, we did have notices of findings that were associated with the FSMA, and I had listed these findings here. As you can see, some of them were repeated from prior years. When we issue a modified repeat, we show the progress that has been made year over year. Also, some of the findings were new in fiscal 23 as well. I'll pause here for any questions. I know we're running up close to the 11:30 hour, so I believe there's someone behind me presenting. But I'll pause and answer any questions on the 2 engagements that Kearney performed this past year.
Okay. Hearing none, I think it's wonderful that you have continued to explore this with us. We've had Kearney. How long do you have as the relationship partner with us? Do you have to rotate?
So personally, I had joined the engagement, I believe, 2 fiscal years ago. Our contract, we have the option for fiscal 24 and fiscal 25. So the prepared performance for this year is actually just kicking off here shortly in March for the financial statement audit, as well as the FSMA. And be happy to report on this next year come this time.
Thank you. Okay, our next presentation is from Janice Coughlin-Peaster. Brief CFO update and presentation to the committee about the responsibilities of the Office of Budget, Finance, and Award Management. Janice?
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me today, and I'm going to try to move quickly as the cleanup batter here and help you give you a few updates on our efforts. First, let me note that we're very pleased with the outcome of the fiscal 23 financial statement audit. It's the 26th clean opinion in a row for NSF, and for the last 7 consecutive years, we've maintained the no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So as Brian put it, the clean audit. And it's representative of the hard work of staff within BFA, IRM, across the foundation, and within the IG. Not only is this a not only is this the case during this year, but over many years, we've really built and adapted our risk management and internal control processes. And it's a very strong reflection of the important and effective partnership we have with Allison and her team in OIG and Brian and the independent auditor team. So really the ability to respect each other's differing yet complementary roles, consult and consider varying perspectives and options, and maintaining a positive work environment is no small feat. So when we do it right, we amplify each other's efforts to ensure good stewardship of taxpayer funds while we also are achieving the agency's mission. So we realize it's not a zero-sum game. It's an important balance that requires daily care. So I'm really proud that all of our teams have built and sustained this professional relationships that are at the center of this achievement. Brian noted a few of the NFRs, and while these findings didn't rise to the level of impacting the overall audit, we appreciate their importance and the importance of addressing them. So we actually began work on nearly all of them before the final letter was issued. So again, it's a measure of the effective working relationship and the importance we place on the audit process. So the CFO audit report, the CFO report that I provided to the full board for last month's meeting contains more information, but I wanted to highlight a few things. So first up, we've had some recent and upcoming outreach to the scientific community. Last week, NSF held a regional workshop for HBCUs in 4 EPSCoR states. So the goal of this workshop was to encourage greater HBCU participation and applications in NSF's funding programs. There was an opportunity to learn and ask questions about the financial and administrative requirements for NSF awards. So this was put together by teams within BFA divisions, as well as several directorates, and of course, our EPSCoR program office. And there's also a virtual component of this event that is scheduled for March 18th. Coming up on March 12th, our policy office here in BFA will be hosting a virtual event targeting the full NSF research community. We have more than 6,000 people registered to date, and the policy office will be providing updates and walking through updates made to our PAP guide, the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide. Later this month, our Research Infrastructure Office will host our 2024 Research Infrastructure Workshop. It'll be a hybrid format, actually held in Arizona. And so this workshop is really a forum for all of NSF's research infrastructure projects to come together, exchange lessons learned, discuss new initiatives, and demonstrate project management tools and techniques. So it's a great opportunity for us to connect colleagues across disciplines and organizations to promote collaboration. And last up, in early June, our NSF Grants Conference will take place in Philadelphia. We'll have both an in-person and virtual attendance possible. This will be the first in-person grants conference since the fall of 2019. So we expect up to 400 people in person, and we will also expect thousands more as virtual attendees. So this is, again, a conference where NSF will provide up-to-date information about policies, procedures, and specific funding opportunities, and answer questions of attendees. And one last item to note is additionally, earlier this week, we convened our Budget and Operations Advisory Committee. So this advisory committee is the one that BFA shares with the Office of Information and Resource Management. And we, in fact, this last go around, we've expanded the scope to include our new Chief Information Officer Office, so CIO, as well as the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. So the meeting was held in open session and included a report from Dr. Chuck Barber, which was very similar to the presentation he provided to the full National Science Board last month. It included a discussion with the committee and our team that are working to meet requirements of the OMB memorandum on organizational health and organizational performance. So we received both praise from them as well as very helpful feedback on our efforts to help guide as we mature through that process. Terry Carpenter, our Chief Information Officer, provided his vision for the new CIO office and how he plans to continue and build on the strong IT governance and operations at NSF. And the advisory committee has a subcommittee on NSF's IT and enterprise architecture strategy, and they presented draft recommendations for NSF to consider in informing our capital planning and investment control board actions looking towards the fiscal 26 budget year. So I know I ran through an awful lot. Thank you again. I'm happy to address any questions you may have now or after the close of the meeting.
Thank you very much for that. But today is the last meeting of the 2022-2024 term of the Committee on Oversight. I want to thank my colleagues, particularly our Vice Chair, Stephen Leith, for everyone's time and attention to committee issues during the past 2 years. When I started my tenure as CO Chair in 2022, I proposed to frame our agenda around 8 pillars or substantive areas. I'm happy to say that we have accomplished a great deal and touched on all of these pillars, which include re-examination of NSF's merit review process, data, broader impacts, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, merit review digest, established programs to stimulate competitive research, EPSCoR, enterprise risk management, ERM, and connecting these initiatives to co-produce outcomes with NSF. In 2022, Committee on Oversight continued to consider how it could best re-examine the merit review process. We were engaged in reviewing parts of the process through our work on several pillars identified above, such as data, broader impacts, and DEIA. After the committee retreat to consider CO's options in November 2022, we decided to recommend that a joint NSB-NSF commission be charged with taking on a focused, comprehensive examination. The subject was important enough and broad enough to require an entity focused on that task. In addition, a separate commission could include NSF members who would engage in the co-production of the entity's examination, suggestions, and report. The board agreed and stood up the joint NSB-NSF Merit Review Commission in February 2023. All of us except Vicky, who joined the CO later, also serve on the Merit Review Examination Commission. I was pleased to be joined in those efforts by Wanda Ward, who agreed to be vice chair of the commission. So the CO can rightfully take credit for great strides on merit review re-examination goals. CO provides a strong foundation for the MRX Commission work through our work on at least 4 other pillars. These include regular reviews of merit review digests and the creation of board overviews for them, through our continuous work on broader impacts, including development of a board resolution requiring and requesting broader impact expertise on COV panels, through examination of NSF's DEIA goals, including a board resolution on improved reviewer training to address bias among areas. In addition, the Committee on Oversight collaborated with the Committee on Strategy to create a regular touch point for review of NSF's annual performance goals, notably ones related to increasing the number and percentages of proposals from underrepresented researchers and research institutions. The Oversight Committee has also promoted the need to collect and analyze high-quality data regarding participants in merit review process, funding decisions, and outcome of funding products. I note this work was started by chairs before me, including John Anderson and Anila Sargent. The CO developed a meeting early last year to EPSCoR issues. The meeting was particularly timely for several reasons. The CHIPS and Science Act calls for NSF substantially to increase its EPSCoR investment in the coming years. In addition, CIOS had recently released its report on the future of EPSCoR, and OIA's Evaluation and Assessment Capability Division had received and released an NSF Commission study of EPSCoR as a mechanism for building research competitiveness. NSF reported on its assessment of the program's current status and how NSF is responding to report findings, recommendations, and legislative mandates. Finally, I met with senior NSF staff to discuss NSF's ERM program and consider where the Committee on Oversight could usefully be involved. Despite a good engagement, we were not able to schedule a formal committee meeting around this topic. We will not lose focus on it, however. In addition to the known goals for CO, we devoted attention to an important unexpected issue, the allegations of sexual assault and harassment in Antarctica, raised in the Sexual Assault and Harassment Prevention Report made public in the summer of 2022. We held a joint meeting with the Awards and Facilities Committee in September 2022. We were active with staff in strategizing responsive action and promoting accountability. In addition to these specific initiatives, the Committee on Oversight continued to discharge its important ongoing responsibilities, including quarterly review of the CFO's report and the OIG's annual audit of the agency's financial statements, both of which we did today. We also review the OIG annual plan, statement of management challenges, and semi-annual report on OIG activities with the NSF management responses. I think you'll agree we've accomplished a great deal as a committee these 2 years. I thank you all. It was a privilege to work with you, and I look forward to seeing what else you will all accomplish in these areas. And with that, we conclude today's meeting of the Committee on Oversight at 11:36 a.m. Thank you, everybody.
Steve, let me just add our gratitude for your leadership in the committee. You did a really strong job in making sure we're on track and covered a lot of things. Thanks very much.
Here, here.
You're most welcome.
Absolutely.